Hello everyone, nice to see you. I hope you're doing well today. Yes, I'm sitting outside, the bugs are killing me, but nevertheless, here is the interesting thing. We're waiting on Hurricane Michael, and everyone is just anxious. Whoa, everybody's buzzing around, anxious. So as I was sitting here thinking about all this anxiety I'm seeing, I went to the market today. They canceled it because everybody's anxious about a hurricane. As I'm looking at people frantically moving about, and here's the irony. Where I live right now, there's no risk. We're just going to have a little bit of a storm surge, but it's all going to be fine. Not to stress out. There are other people who are going to have a whole lot bigger problems than us. Nevertheless, this anxiety thing started making me think. You know, the three biggest issues being treated in the mental health community today are substance abuse, anxiety, and depression. Substance abuse, anxiety, and depression. And that kind of makes me want to ask some bigger, more significant questions about the model and how people pursue therapy for all sorts of support and change in their lives. And the crazy thing I'm trying to figure out this afternoon is that with so many people in therapy, why are so few people actually getting better? That's a big, big question. Why aren't they getting better? For God's sake, that's what it should do. It should show you how to move forward. It should to invite you to a better self. It should do all sorts of things. And so today I want to just go on a short rant about why therapy doesn't work and what you need to do about it if you feel like there are some things in your life that you want to change. And don't get me wrong, I'm not throwing down some law or some rule, or I'm just giving you an opinion because as a therapist, I was trained really well to do certain things and to ask certain questions. And after practicing for 20-something years, I really got to the point where I said, we're missing the boat. We're missing the boat as a community of academics, as a community of practitioners. We're missing the boat as therapists and counselors and social workers and people who are folks that want to make a difference in the world. And so over the last several years, I've really analyzed this thing called therapy and what it does for people and what it doesn't do for people. And then apart from that, I've also done a whole lot of thinking about what I know about how people truly change. So I want to talk about that as well, but let me hold that for just a second. All right, so I made a note to myself. Here's the thing, and I want to just provoke you with some thoughts about therapy, about going to a therapist. First of all, if you've been to a therapist, now you're going to a therapist, you've been to a therapist before, think about what they did for you. Now, if it was an episodic situation in your life, right? Maybe you had a death or a divorce, or you needed just some coaching to move you through some life transition, then you might look back at your therapy experience and say, yeah, that was fantastic. Worked really well. And that was because it was time limited, it was focused around a certain issue, and it moved you to a place of evolution. So I celebrate that if that's happened in your life. But what about those of you that have been to a therapist for 10, 12, 15, 20 years? We all have friends that have been in the therapist churn, churn them, keep them addicted to therapy. And if that's you, I'm sorry, because you've been caught in a cycle that I'm going to show you how to break out of. Nevertheless, if you have been to a therapist for many, many years, or even for a couple of months, and you don't seem to feel like your life is better, more controllable, more manageable, greater balance, a greater sense of peace, less fear, if you're not getting that out of your therapy, then there's something wrong. And frankly, as an ex-therapist, I don't believe therapy does anything to heal your soul. In fact, I think therapy actually damages your soul. Let me break that down for you. And I know how provocative that is. Let me help you understand what I mean by that. Therapy doesn't heal your soul because it doesn't acknowledge that you are completely perfect, completely divine, completely evolving, and changing and getting better every day, does it? Have you ever had a therapist say, hey, wow, you're evolving so beautifully. I'm so excited for you. You don't need me. Keep on. Go on. Do your good work. You don't see that, do you? Therapy is a band-aid, frankly. Because what you do is you go every week or every other week or once a month for 45, 50 minutes. Your therapist sits down in front of you and they say something like, well, how are you doing since the last time I saw you? Let me tell you what that is. Bam! Puts you right back in the past. Is that where you need to be? I don't think so. So tell me about how you've been since I've seen you. Or they might say, so what are the struggles you're wrestling with right now? Or they might say, have you had the same relational challenges that we've been speaking of? They're going to do something to dig and to mine into where you were. And fundamentally, that is flawed. A therapist should say, tell me how much you've changed since our last session. Tell me the areas of enlightenment that you have discovered. Tell me the things you saw as struggles and how you overcame those things. Help me understand how you have progressed into a more beautiful expression of yourself. Has your therapist ever said any of that to you? I think not. Therapy is a band-aid because it doesn't get to the core stories. It gets to the pathology, to the externalized behaviors, the feelings, the emotions. It gets around all that stuff and mucks in all that shit, but that's not getting to the core story of why you have certain beliefs and how those beliefs are rooted in fear and how that fear is driving your life. It's a very simple equation. Therapy is a codependent relationship. Now get this one on. Put your seatbelt on. Think about it this way, okay? A codependent relationship it's an enmeshed relationship that needs, each party needs the other, right? And you go to your therapist because you feel like you have some need to see that human being. You don't feel strong and powerful and resourceful and resilient on your own. And I could talk about why you don't for a million years, and I'll do that at some point. But you have this desire or this obligation or this feeling that if you don't go to that therapist, you're not ever going to get healed. And now here's the interesting thing. You're never going to get healed. But the codependent relationship on their side is that they need you. They need you to have someone to speak with. They need you to have someone to fill their office. They need you to become a code and a diagnosis. They need you to be someone who becomes a revenue stream for them. And so think about it just like you would Big Pharma, right? A drug company is never going to make something that heals you instantly. And if they have the benefit, they're going to find ways to make you sicker along the journey, so you have to use more drugs. Basic capitalism, right? It's crazy. So with therapy, it's the same thing. That therapist needs to keep you in a place where you don't feel fully empowered, fully strong, fully capable, fully functional. And they do what I call cerebral masturbation all day, because they allow you to talk about this same story that has worked so well for you for so many years. That story of oppression, that story of limitation, that story of sadness, that story of shyness, or whatever that story is, your therapist indulges it. What a therapist should do is they should look at you and say, help me see your divine essence, and let's build upon that. How do you want your life to look and feel? What do you want joy to be like in your life? How can we create the most peaceful process for you along the journey? What limitations and stories do you hold that keep you small, out of your divinity? That's what a therapist should be saying to you. Not, how are you doing since the last time I saw you? Are you still anxious? Are you still feeling depressed? Get this. Here's an interesting concept. So you got your ass seated in the chair across from the therapist, and they say, are you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how depressed are you this week? Now, here's the interesting thing. It's implied. How depressed are you this week? Right? So subconsciously you say, wow, I'm depressed. So maybe I'm just a little bit depressed, maybe a 1 on that scale. Maybe I'm really depressed, maybe a 10 on that scale. But The moment you reply, you say, I am depressed, which reinforces a core story in your mind, and it has created this codependent, ugly relationship that says you've got to keep going back for help and support. That practitioner should look at you and say, help me understand why you're allowing your stories to keep you in a place of oppression. What triggered your stories? What made you feel small? What fear are you trying to mitigate right now? Let's get right down to the brass tacks, because I'm not buying this depression business. Now let me add a caveat. We have all been indoctrinated to believe that depression and anxiety and certain other mental health disorders are purely chemical, neurochemical. But the interesting fact about that is that about 90% of it still is a great big guess. Sure, we know that the brain operates on certain chemicals, and when certain things happen, certain chemical reactions happen, and we understand that the brain is full of electricity, but we have not ever really begun to think about how the brain is interacting with the thoughts, and the thoughts dancing with the brain, and the body and the brain, and all of it connected. And so psychology has looked at the brain as this separate little piece in the world, a piece of you. And I happen to believe that that is very myopic. You are so much more than the fluids running through your head. And get this powerful thought under your noggin. What if you believed in the concept that you create your reality 100%, completely exclusively? You create it. So going back to the therapist, if you create your own reality, then when you walk into that therapy office, you're creating a reality of codependency, a reality of denial, a reality of pervasive pain, a reality of suffering, a reality of inability and a lack of capability and a lack of function and a complete sense of powerlessness. Okay, so I might be getting wound up. But you know what? What if you could believe that you have the ability to not fall prey to what's going on around you? That you don't have to be impacted by something like a hurricane that's going to cause you great anxiety. By the way, the media just exploits that. And just I won't say what I was going to say. What if you were able to step out of that? What if you were able to say, no one else makes me feel a certain way? What if you looked at the world and you said, I can perceive my entire world the way that I choose to. I can react to the world the way that I choose to. And that's all I can control. That no matter what happens in my life, I have the strength, the power, the source, the resiliency, the capability, the function to weather whatever storm, because of course I've been evolving. See, that'd be beautiful if you said that to yourself every day. Thinking about who you were in your 20s. You know, looking back, you often compare in hindsight and you think it's 2020. That is the most ignorant shit I've ever heard. There's nothing hindsight 2020. What hindsight is an evolved being looking at a pre-evolutionary state of themselves. If it's not 2020, there's something really wrong. You get it, okay? So therapy is also pathologizing. People become their diagnosis, and this is the most tragic thing. I have a very dear friend. He's 69 years old, and during a very rough patch relationally, in business, a bunch of different things just kind of cracked in his world all of a sudden. And so he had to seek some mental health treatment. And since that time, we talk every single week. And since that time, and it's been literally 14 years, he thinks that he's got a very unstable brain structure. He's always concerned about his anxiety levels. He's aware at any given time if he's on a manic swing or not. And I look at that and I say, my God, brother, you're creating that. You've aged out of that. That doesn't have to be your story anymore. And I know there are people that will fight me on that. And I do know there's a neurochemical aspect to it, but I also know that that there's not a lot of research on mind-body connection, and that we don't really connect the mind and the body, the sense of consciousness, our sense of awareness, and most people don't stay in the fucking present moment. And so if you live in the past, you live in the future, guess what? You're going to have some anxiety, you're going to have some depression, you're going to have some paranoid schizophrenia, some delusional ideations, all sorts of stuff. And we might even throw a good measure of ADHD on there for just a second, right? So pathologizing, because you have to be a diagnosis in order for a therapist to get paid. You are a diagnosis. You're a code that's submitted to an insurance company. And as long as you fit the criteria of what that code, that diagnosis means, then they will continue to be paid, or they'll be paid for 12 sessions, or they'll be paid for 42 sessions, but they're going to be paid as long as you have that diagnosis. Now, that means that therapist is incentivized to not cure you, but to keep you in disease. It's fundamentally flawed. It's a mess. It's a complete mess. Then on top of that, when you live in that diagnosis, you become that, and when you become the diagnosis, then you reinforce the codependency in the relationship, and guess what? Bam! It's all designed to keep you coming back. Here's the bottom line. Therapy is it's one of two things most often. Now, there are practitioners that work in mindfulness, work in the present moment, work in, like the work I do, where you get to the core of the issue and then you figure out how to live fully in the present moment. Now, those practitioners aside, right? Your therapist is going to go one of two directions with you. And I want you to watch your therapy session next time, okay? They're going to go into your diagnosis and into the past. How was it last week? How are you dealing with the anxiety? What's up with your depression? How's your eating disorder? Etc., 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 right? Or they're going to go to the future. They're going to go to the future. What's worrying you? What are you stressed about? What are you thinking about? What do we need to plan and predict and prepare? And I want you to invite your therapist. I want you to invite your therapist to help you live mindfully in the moment. Now, Sarah, let me clarify something, okay? I think Louise Hay is absolutely fantastic, and I bet you did have a great therapist, because if you had a therapist that referred you to her work, then I say bravo, brilliant. That's absolutely right on. So bravo for that. But I want you to go to your therapy session this week, and I want you just to look at, are you getting better, right? And I want you to invite your therapist to focus the work with you on this one statement. Tell me how much you have changed since our last session. How are you growing? How are you evolving? What's getting better and better every day in every way? Because what you think about, you bring about. And if you go to your therapy session planning on digging up and trudging up the junk that you need to focus on, because that allows you to justify going to the therapist, then I want to invite you to really check yourself on that, because that's just going to keep you in disease. If you want to get better, I want to invite you to think about how much you have evolved, how much you've changed just since yesterday or the day before, I want to invite you to wrap your past up. It's not serving you. It's not serving you at all. Wrap it up and get rid of it. And if you don't like me saying that to you, then I want you to call me and let's argue about it, okay? And if you're really worried about the future, what's going to happen, what should happen, what could happen, and oh my God, I want to really encourage you to step fully into the present and realize one thing. The only thing we have is right now, right here. This beautiful 3-foot square that doesn't have to be impacted by what's out there. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that everybody has responsibilities. But if you take full responsibility for your actions, for your perceptions, for your reactions, for how you're moving forward on your journey. If you take responsibility for that, then you'll be focusing forward, not on the piece of shit that you used to be or that you think you are. Change only happens when enough pain prevails that you decide to own yourself. And get your head around that one. Change only happens when enough pain, enough struggle, enough challenge, enough difficulty, enough suffering forces you to a place of action. And I want you to do a heart evaluation right now. Now, let me tell you this too. I'm saying this not because I'm trying to bust anybody's balls or badmouth an industry. I'm saying this because over my journey, I've realized that I wish someone had simply said, let's get at your core stories. Let's get at the root of why you think and believe and act the way you do. So, bottom line, I want you to think about the pain and the struggle and the difficulty and the anxiety and the fears and the depression or whatever it may be. Substance use, relational challenges, difficulty at work, whatever seems to be weighing on you. I want you to really consider that. I want you to think about it. And I want you to ask yourself one question. What stories do I hold about this circumstance? What conditions? What expectations am I holding? What judgments do I have for myself or others? How am I suffering and choosing to suffer? And if you want to have a conversation about what it means to really live fully in the present moment, let's do that. There's all sorts of stuff about mindfulness and meditation and grounding, but I want to tell you it really is not so much about all that. I mean, granted, it's about all that, but it's more about stepping out of a place where you feel like your past is something you got to still live with, and that your future is actually something that's going to happen. It's when you get to a point where you are able to breathe, ground yourself, know that you set your intention throughout the day, what you think about, that you bring about, that you create every reality for yourself, and that you accept total and profound full responsibility for who you are. Who you are, where you're going, what you're doing, how you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're acting. Total, profound responsibility. Radical responsibility. Now, I wish each one of you great joy in life. And I am so sure that if you're suffering today, you can make a choice to not. You can make a choice to not. Now, as my smart-ass friend Miles said to me one day when I said that, he said, what if I break my arm? I was like that cat, gotta just say the one thing, because I had said that all suffering is a choice. I said, well, I guess the best thing that we can do is just knock back an Oxycontin, have a martini, and enjoy the ride. All right, my friends. You guys be well. Thanks for hanging out with me. Send me a note or a comment or a like or a share, or give me a call if you want to chat about any of this. Be well, friends. By the way, the hurricane's coming. The winds are whipping up. Bye, guys.